You're listening to the Point. Ready or not, let's keep it real at Turning Point.
More often than not, the unexpected happens. Life comes with real challenges. The reason we're here is to have those hard conversations, to grow and to realize we're not alone. So, ready or not, let's start understanding more about the darkness of following in your family's missteps. From a woman who has been there and is beating many odds. A portion of today's students are what used to be considered non-traditional. They're parents. So student parents, especially those who are single, have such low rates of college completion when they're compared with their non-parenting counterparts. Only 27% of single parents attain a degree or certificate within 6 years of enrollment, compared with the 56% of dependent students. However, we're working hard in our Earn While You Learn program here to help men and women conquer these goals and ultimately improve these statistics. So welcome to Turning Point. I'm your host, Debbie Taylor. I have the privilege of being the executive director. Along with me today is my co-host, Sherry Love, who is the nurse manager. And joining us today is Susan Cavill, who is a case manager here at the center. And then we have a young lady named Sarah, who's a bit of an inspiration around here. I know you've personally inspired our very own Nikki, who runs the front office and is actually recording this podcast as we speak. She's behind the scenes. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a college student, you're a mom.
Yes, so I am a college student. I will be getting my associate's degree in pre-business in May of this year. I'll be 23 in February actually, and I just take care of my son and I take care of my grandma and I go to school.
That's a lot. Like, how old is your son?
He just turned 3 in September.
So how do you feel about those statistics that Debbie just talked about being stacked against you?
I think that they are incredibly daunting, but I think that there is a way to overcome them, and you do need to be, you need to be, determined in what you want to do, because there are a lot of odds against you, not only just outside of school, but once you get into school, there are a lot of obstacles. A lot of teachers won't always understand that you are the only one there for your child, and that sometimes that your family does have to come first, and that's just how it is. And so you have to find the right balance of being able to put school first and being able to put your family first.
Well, and you're not only taking care of your son, but your grandma too. So you're juggling a lot more responsibility than just what's in front of you.
Right, yeah, and that's something that I've always had to be very clear with my professors up front. And I've been very blessed that they've been very understanding that, there are times that my family has to come first. So I've always come to them, at the beginning of the semester and tell them, there are times that I am just completely unavailable, and that's just how it is. It's not always like that, but as long as they understand, most of the time they will work with you if you're just open with them about what you're going with, because a lot of the professors, they are very open-minded. They understand that everyone is just a person too.
Well, and I think it kind of comes back to, again, right, it requires communication, whether it's your employer. Sherry and I see that a lot in the center with young girls who come in through different programs to work. Just the lack of communication.
Right.
Showing up, communicating is half the battle.
It really is. It really, really is.
So you sound like you have it really together. Have you always had it together?
No. By no means have I always had it together. I think this is more of, not so much of a recent thing, but it's kind of more of a more recent development. And I guess since my son has come around, I guess. Before I had my son, I was into drugs and I was in a really bad environment, and then having my son really made me come around.
And how did you find out you were pregnant with your son? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. It was my 19th birthday, and me and my family, we had gone out to the Pancake Alley, actually. And then we all went our separate ways. And then I got a call from my dad, and he said that the Metro narcotics agents were there at his house picking him up. And then that's all I had heard from him. And then a couple hours later, he called me and said just to go down there and that I could go pick him up. And then when I went down there, they did have a warrant for my arrest. And as I was getting booked into the jail, they give you a pregnancy test, and they told me, well, it's pregnant, or it's positive, And I didn't know what to do. I got all hot and all warm, and I just had to sit down for a second. And then so that was how I found out about my son, and it was just something just changed in me once I found out I was going to have my son.
So you weren't thinking that you were pregnant? You weren't suspecting?
I had no idea. I had been getting sick recently, but I thought it was just, I don't know, just whatever. I don't know. I never thought that I was pregnant at all. But then once I found out, it was like everything made sense. Everything made sense. And I just, in my heart, I knew I was having a boy. And then here we are. And I had my son.
So how long had you been using up to that point?
It had probably been 4 years of using some substance. It had switched from, one to another, but it had been at least 4 years of using something every day.
And you just quit cold turkey?
Yeah, I just quit cold turkey one day. I just decided, once I found out about my son, I just decided that just wasn't what I wanted for my son. I couldn't imagine giving my son that life. I knew that he deserved better and that we deserved better and we could do it.
So we talked a little bit at the introduction, like following in your family's missteps.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about where your addiction came from.
I would say my addiction really came from my family. I grew up in a very an environment where partying was very normalized. Even and every weekend we would go over to my aunt and uncle's house, and we would stay until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't really understand what was going on then, but I grew up with that's what you did on the weekends. You go somewhere and you stay out really, really late and you're miserable, and then you go home. And then, as I grew up and I got older, it was, you get invited, to more of these things, and then you start drinking with the family, and then they start using coke, and then, they start using meth, or they start using heroin, and then it's all just around you. When everyone's doing it, it seems like it's all okay, and there's no one, when there's not a single person there doing anything different. Of course, when you grow up that way, you think that that's totally normal.
So how do you think you made the shift in the mindset that, okay, this isn't what I want for my baby?
I think it was being in jail. You always, whenever you're doing, drugs or you're doing bad things, you always talk about, you could go to jail, But actually sitting in jail was what made me like, I never wanted to be in jail again. And I never wanted to be like, the thought of having to give birth to my son while being in jail or something, and having to be away from my son ever, just that alone just was earth shattering to me. And it made me want to never let that be a possibility.
So Sherry and I were looking into statistics before you came in, just to get an idea of what that looks like for women. And I don't know if this will shock you or not, but women's incarceration rate has grown twice the rate of men's in like the last couple of decades. And when we look at like other countries, the United States like surpasses how many people we incarcerate than any other country in the world. But then you look at our little New Mexico, and we're even above the national statistics for our nation, which is high. So I think it helps us to hear that, okay, it was normalized. It was, if the incarceration rate is high, I think that becomes normalized too.
And you think about all of the moms being pulled out of the homes and what that does in the state of New Mexico and the nation. And it says that 85% of the women that are incarcerated are mothers, and 25% are pregnant on arrest.
Wow.
So it's really high. And then so many of those are separated from their babies within 1 or 2 days.
Right. And I mean, I hate to have to talk about this, but one of my cousins had come to me, and the way that she had talked to me about how her kids just live with grandma, and she made it like just a joke. When the kids grow up, they just go with grandma. And that was something I never wanted, was for my kids to not know me as their primary caregiver. And for so many people, that's just the normalized environment, is that you can, have a kid, and then just you will get in trouble, and then your family takes care of it. And it does create a huge separation between you and the child. And I couldn't imagine having that with my child, and it's all so normalized, and it's really scary.
I think some women probably have that fear when they find out that they're pregnant, but then just suppress that. And think, well, mom can just take care of my baby.
Right, and I never thought that even whenever I was at my worst, I could have never imagined being like, oh, thinking it was okay just to let my mom take care of or just whoever, take care of the baby, just because that was such a vital responsibility of mine. You make something, it's so precious, and to think that you would want to just, push it away or whatever. But I guess that is a lot of the environment with drugs and with crime and all of that, is that it takes over, it completely takes over, and that's all that matters. And it's crazy.
Want to look and think that you overcame all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were able to see, okay, I want different, I'm going to do different. What do you feel like? I mean, I know, okay, in the jail that's when you had your, I'm not doing this, I'm not living this way. Mm-hmm. How hard was it when you got out?
At first, the very first day, it was really hard because when I got home, it was all the same people there, and they had, the needles still laying out, and the little, the cups and the baggies and everything all laying out right there. And of course, it was really hard. And I remember thinking to myself, I really want to use right now. I really, really want to get high. And just whatever, I don't know what it was, but I just didn't. Whatever it was. And every day I just continued to just make that choice. Just, you can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. But it was really hard at first to come home and, because when you're very first pregnant, you don't look pregnant. You can't feel the baby. It's not there. So you can almost, in your head, it's not real yet, And so it was really hard at first to kind of remind yourself that it's not just you anymore. And that's what
like you had pressure from your family or friends to use?
Actually, no. That I was very thankful that they all were very clear that they did not want me using. So even if I had come to any of them, I don't think that they would have let me, but they also didn't try to shield me from it by any means. So I don't know.
So it wasn't pressure, but it was still easily accessible.
Yeah, I mean, if one of them had gone into the other room and it could have easily gone missing or whatever, there was many chances, and no one tried to shield me from it by any means. They didn't change their actions by any means.
Wow. So one day at a time.
Yeah.
It's kind of the theme. Like, okay, just don't use today and then worry about tomorrow.
Exactly, yeah. And whenever I was getting clean from heroin, actually, I had to tell myself, whatever you have to do to just make this second go by. If that's the increment you have to work with is just this second, then that's what you have to do. And then soon you can bring it up to this minute, this hour, this day. Whatever you have to do to get through that day to not use is what you need to do. And that's what I just try and tell myself, just got to get through today, just get through today, and everything does get better. And when you take a step and you look back at how far you really have come, it is amazing, and you do feel really good about yourself whenever you can, take a step back and be like, wow, that is really crazy.
So looking back, do you ever struggle with using again?
I wouldn't say I struggle with using. The thing I struggle with maybe is that loss of freedom. Is now that I have my son, I can't go out and even just go out and do nothing by myself, not even go drink or do anything, go and do nothing by myself. I don't have that. But I know that I chose my son, and so I don't regret it at all. But that's the only thing that I maybe struggle with, is that loss of freedom. But I've been very blessed that my dad, he is very supportive, and he will help me with my son a lot. And with the help of New Mexico, I get the daycare, so I do have that little bit of freedom. And so I don't really have a big issue with it. But if I miss anything, it's that being able to go do whatever I want. But what I'm gaining is so much more than what I'm losing out on.
That's incredible. So what was your vision for your life, before you got arrested, before you were sitting in that jail cell and decided to get clean? What vision did you have for your future?
I pictured myself just doing what I was doing, just selling drugs and getting little bits of money. And I pictured myself, getting high as a little old lady. I never pictured myself getting clean. I thought, that this life was perfectly fine. Why change it? I never ever saw myself doing anything different than exactly what I was doing. Which, when I say that aloud now, it sounds so bizarre. It sounds like a fairy tale or something, to think that you could think that you're just going to do something like that your whole life and to be completely happy doing it is crazy.
But we talk about that in here all the time. You know, you do what you know, and that's what you grew up knowing.
Right.
And so I think, again, back to the education, it's so important because if you don't know different, you don't do different.
Right.
What you know is what you do. That's where you stay until you learn. And I think most people do want a vision, or they do want to get better. They just don't have.
They don't know that they could ever be like at their wildest dream. You know, that point my wildest dream was to even just be in school, and I never thought that I could do that because I didn't have a high school diploma, I didn't have my GED, I didn't have anything like that. So at that point I never even thought I could be there. And so to go, you know, you just have to get yourself there, you know. So it is crazy.
When you were using, were you working? Were there other places where you needed to show responsibility?
No, not at all. It was just, I guess with you show a weird amount of responsibility to your friends. You would put in, like how do I explain it? You all work together to like get drugs or whatever, I guess is what I mean. Like you all like work together to do that. So that was the only like responsibility or like job or anything I had was, you know, you would help your friends so we could all
Pull your weight to make sure everybody's supplied.
Yeah.
Interesting. That sounds more like a community though than some other community. I mean, if you think about it,
right?
Everybody wants to be connected.
Yeah.
So have you found, I mean, in talking about that community, have you found another community that you're not doing that with? Of course, I know you're not doing that.
Yeah.
Because we all need to feel a part of community and have that support.
Right. I think I do feel that way with Nikki, and I do feel that sense of community whenever I do go to church with Nikki. I haven't been going as often as I should, and I will admit that.
Because I'm sure you felt that love and support with the other group.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
yeah,
you had fun together and...
Yeah, I mean, you have the best of times and you have the worst of times with those people. And me and my friends, we do look back and we think of all the good times that we did have with all of those people. But at the same time, all around those good times was such horrible circumstance, you know, and it is crazy to think that we had so much fun and had such a good time, although we're surrounded by just misery, you know. That's all we were really surrounded by was just misery, you know.
Which makes it easier to stay in that cycle of using, because then the misery goes away, at least momentarily.
Right,
so
exactly.
You can see the addiction factor.
Tell us a little bit about the steps you took to get clean and what steps you've taken so far to get to where you are now.
Well, I have been clean for about almost 4 years now, because it was, whenever I found out I was pregnant with my son. And then the first couple months of being pregnant was really just kind of, I think, just like getting used to, you know, being clean and, not wanting to still being in that environment, but not doing it in the same capacity. And then once I finally, me and my son's dad, we did have to move out of the house we were living at, and we moved back in with it was my dad and my grandma were living at the house. And my grandma, she's always encouraged me to go back to school. And so she told me to get my GED. So she took me down to DACC and I got my GED whenever I was pregnant. It took me, I think, 2 or 3 times, but I stuck with it and I did it.
Good for you.
And then I enrolled in classes right after my son was born, because once I got my GED, I was pretty big. I waited till the last second. I was pretty big. And so I had my son, and then I started in school. I think it was that next January, I think I started. And I mean, school opened up so many doors for me. It allowed me to not only explore who I was as a person, as a sober, adult, because I had never really known myself as a sober person. All of my self-discovery years were high. So I didn't know really who I was or what I liked or anything like that. So going to school really allowed me to do that and to explore myself and to find out really what it is that I wanted to do. And then to be in an environment with so many people that were so different from the environment that I was used to really helped me, I think, really grow as a person and realize that it was a good thing what I had done, because, you know, at first I wasn't sure if what I was doing was the right thing, or if I was going to ever be normal or have friends again. I never thought that I would be able to be like that again, but being around other people really made me feel like this is the right thing to do, and I am in the right place. And now I'm going to graduate, you know, this semester, and I'm so excited to see where, you know, life takes me next, because I never thought I could go to school or to do any of these things. You know, I never thought that would be possible.
That's amazing.
That really is.
With the friends and the family, or the friends that you are running with now and that you meet at school, do you share a lot of your background with them?
Usually not at first. I usually try not to let anyone know that I'm that kind of person. I try to, you know, make my outward appearance and how I am. I try not to let anyone know that I'm like that, or that I have any type of like criminal background, because I do think that there is that stigma, unfortunately. But then whenever because people, the way I am and the way that I look, people think that I don't know anything, that I must be the type of person that hasn't lived at all. So then whenever I tell people that, they're like, oh wow, you know, and then you've come so far and you don't look like that kind of person at all, you know. People really they'll be really, you know, taken aback by it. But I try not to share it as much, because I do think that people are weird about it. But whenever I do share my story with people, I do think it opens their eyes, and it changes the way that they think about things sometimes, because they can see that, you know, it's not, you know, people who are in recovery aren't just the crazy looking people that you see on the TV. You know, it's me and you, and it's everyone, you know, it's all kinds of people suffer with things, and it's not who you think it is. You know, sometimes it's the most, you know, normal looking people are suffering with crazy things. So
Absolutely. And so you make sure you have that trust before you confide in them. You
Yeah.
wouldn't just tell somebody you've only known for a little bit of time.
No, I
Okay.
wouldn't just, and I think maybe it is from that background, is that I don't trust anyone. I feel like they would maybe use it against me or treat me differently or something, but I don't trust anyone to know, because I find it really intimate. I think that's a really intimate detail about myself, so I'd like not to share it. But I know some of my friends like to share it, it makes them feel better to share it, but I personally am not like that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you're beginning to see more of who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's defining you, not so much what you came from.
Right, exactly. And I think that because I did, unfortunately, I didn't make it out of that without any criminal charges. I am a felon now. And so that is really hard with trying to get employment. Or for a while, I was thinking that I wanted to become like an x-ray technician, and then to realize that maybe that wasn't a possibility because of my charges, even though I'm the most trustworthy person, you know what I mean? Like, just because of that, to know that something like that is really, it sucks to know that. But there are consequences, but it's, you know, there are a lot of opportunities that you can still have, though. You know, it doesn't close all the doors, so you should always try. You know, I'm amazed with the things that I've been able to do, even though I have my background.
Yeah. And your story is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And we just can't thank you enough for
Thank you.
being willing to share it. And it's interesting because, like you do say, you know, people make those assumptions. And I love that you said, you know, people, that there is that stigma.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole purpose of doing this, is to talk about those things. Because when you walk into the room, I mean, you're bright-eyed, you're smiling, you're beautiful, you know what I mean? And knowing the story doesn't make you any less beautiful.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, there's a judgment that takes place in learning those things. And so our hope is that we help women to see that there really is beyond that point. So if you're listening today and you're facing an unplanned pregnancy, or you're struggling with drug addiction, or you just need parent education resources, we have a few resources for you. As far as finding parent education resources in your area, you can go to optionline.org. If you are struggling with drug addiction, you can call 1-800-273-8255. And then you can always text or call us at 575-520-1147. If you're listening to this, subscribe, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and remember, stars can't shine without darkness.